Good morning, everyone. We welcome everyone to the session of the IEEE Online Forum on Climate Change Technologies. And please submit your questions and comments in the chat box. I'm happy to introduce our speaker of the session, Dr. Babu Chalamala. Dr. Babu is currently a senior scientist at the Santia National Laboratories. Previously, he was held head of the Energy Storage Technology and Systems Department and program manager for grid energy storage. Dr. Chalamala has wide research and leadership experience in the areas of energy storage and electronic systems. He was a corporate fellow with the Sun Edison for 5 years, where he led research and development and product development in grid scale energy storage. In addition to that, he founded two startup companies commercializing large format lithium batteries and digital X-ray sources. Also, he was a member of research staff with Motorola Research Triangle Institute and Texas Instruments, where he made a contribution to the development of electronic materials and device technologies. He's a fellow of IEEE, American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAS, and the National Academy of Inventors. Dr. Chalamala is a distinguished lecturer of the IEEE Power and Energy Society. He was elected to the US National Academy of Engineering in the year 2024. With that, I would like to invite Dr. Babu Chalamala to the stage to deliver his presentation. Dr. Chalamala.
Thank you, Dalan. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm going to start up and just kind of go through how the grid system is evolving and all the changes that are happening and where storage is going to start playing a role. That's the primary discussion point. So let's look at the major trends in the power sector. I mean, currently, if you look at the power system, it's fairly dynamic. Things are happening pretty quickly in many areas. I mean, we are phasing out coal generation, especially in the developed economies, rather quickly. In many places, continued growth of natural gas generation, replacing the coal fleet, increasing role of renewables. We are rapidly scaling up deployment of energy storage across multiple scales, and the potential resurgence of nuclear, especially small modular reactors. And then we are bringing electrification of transportation sectors through EVs and fleet. Then the industry is also seeing significant demand growth in the power sector. Historically, had not much demand growth, especially in the developed countries. Now with AI and data centers, electric vehicles, the load capacity requirements are growing very rapidly. And so what are the major headwinds for the industry? Large investments needed, especially in the T&D upgrades to support renewable growth. Uneven grid infrastructure readiness for electrification. It also means, large-scale investments needed to support the electrification of the transportation sector. And we are also seeing need for enhanced resiliency, especially for severe weather events, which are happening much more routinely and causing power system failures. And depending on the state and entity where you are located, there are policy bottlenecks which are causing headwinds in the system to adapt quickly. So with that, let's look at what the power system looks like. I mean, broadly speaking, most power systems are big interconnect systems where high voltage AC transmission lines or DC transmission lines. So if you look at the four large continental type grids in the US, you have the four US interconnects, Eastern, Western interconnect, Quebec being a separate grid, and then ERCOT. And European grid is highly connected with significant amount of transmission capacity. And then China and India are large grids. So if you look at the capacity in these large interconnect systems, US is about 1250 gigawatts net capacity for 4 regions with 65 balancing authorities. Europe, you have 34 countries part of the European grid, close to a terawatt of capacity managed by the system operators and roughly 41 transmission system operators. India is a single grid with 5 operating regions and roughly 500 gigawatts of generation capacity and rapidly growing. China, 6 synchronous regional grids with 1,500 gigawatts of net generation capacity with a significant amount of HVDC providing interconnectivity between the regions. So with that backdrop, let's quickly look at one example how things happen in the US. We have a big system with 850 gigawatts of base load, this is more or less the system operates at a level capacity all the time, and the summertime peaks are around 400 gigawatts, bringing the system to about 1,250 gigawatts, and about 7,000 operational power plants. And it's a $400 billion industry, and the average price of electricity is about 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So the expectation is anything we do in the power system, we want to make sure that electricity is delivered reliably at a low cost. And that's part of it. And how do you balance such a large system? So you have number of balancing authorities across the country. Eastern Interconnect has 31 balancing authorities in US and 5 in Canada. Western Interconnect is fairly large, with 34 balancing authorities in the US and 2 in Canada, and the Baja Mexico is also part of the Western Interconnect. Then ERCOT, which is Texas, and Hydro-Quebec are their own systems. So look at where things are happening on the generation side. As I mentioned earlier, the generation is rapidly changing, and we are retiring. If you look at the retirement of the fleet, we are retiring lots of the coal plants very quickly. Over the last 20 years, a lot of the coal fleet was replaced by natural gas. And now, for the last few years, with renewables becoming cost parity with natural gas, we are adding a significant amount of wind and solar coupled with storage. And most of the capacity is coming online right now. As you look at the plant capacity additions, most of it is, wind and solar, and along with storage, and all the retirement fleet is primarily coal. And globally, the story is very similar. We are adding a lot of solar. Roughly 200 plus gigawatts of solar are getting deployed every year now, and wind, roughly about 180, 190 gigawatts are getting installed every year. And then over the last few years, storage had picked up. Storage in the last 2-3 years, are getting traction significantly, getting deployed at a large scale. And a lot of it is coupled with solar or wind, or sometimes independent storage systems. And then as you look into the future, we are bringing in a lot of the EV capacity in the system, and providing capacity needs to charge and the charging infrastructure to provide for the EV and the transportation fleet is a big challenge for the industry, and that's where a lot of the upgrades for the system are coming up. So it's very dynamic. And if you look at why the renewables are getting deployed, and how storage is coming to play into a bigger role here, is finally renewables are at cost parity with combined cycle gas, and in most markets. So, and if you look at what are the costs of generation, that typically goes into the overall cost of the electricity pricing. For example, in the US, roughly right now, somewhere between 5 cents, 5.5 cents, this goes in generation, then about 1.5 or so in the transmission, and 3 cents for the distribution. So any new generation that you bring in has to be within that framework of about 5 to 6 cents, and that's where you can see combined cycle gas is in that range. So you have to be competitive with combined cycle gas for renewables to participate on a large scale. So that's it. So storage and solar assets at this point are playing, are becoming deployed at scale and commercial scale in many markets. And with all the changes we're seeing, the grid edge is also rapidly changing. You have behind the meter technologies like rooftop solar, battery storage, smart loads, and that makes challenging for the grid operators to manage the power flows and providing protection for operations. And then as we bring in transportation, then we have infrastructure bottlenecks, especially in dense urban areas. How do you provide the capacity needs for providing the charging infrastructure for transportation is a big challenge that we're just beginning to face. And then distribution system historically were developed to provide primarily lighting and industrial loads, not so much of large-scale charging. So upgrading the distribution systems to provide fast charging is also a major industry challenge right now, and that requires significant capacity upgrades in the distribution infrastructure. With all these changes, maintain the stability of the grid, the resiliency of the capacity as the system is becoming challenging in some places, and the capacity constraints for larger loads is also is an issue for a lot of these things. And then, as you look further out, rapid evolution of off-grid microgrids will start playing out, especially in the developing economies. And how do you coordinate all these assets? It requires, significant amount of distributed sensing, control, and all the things that are coming up very quickly. So, as I mentioned, maintaining grid stability is very important. And as you bring in more intermittent capacity, that becomes a rather challenging issue. So, for example, if you look at here, you hear about the California duck curve, even though this data is a little bit dated, but the issue is the same. In the evening peaks, when the solar assets are not available anymore, the system has to, this is the Cal ISO data, has to ramp up almost like 12 to 13 gigawatts of capacity within the last 3 to 4 hours. So that's why most of the storage that's deployed in California is roughly 4-hour storage to provide the necessary capacity needs to ramp up the capacity in the evening peaks. And as you transition further out with more renewable capacity, then the requirement for the 4-hour to go beyond 4 hours becomes real. And then historically, we had synchronous generation with big machines providing inertia to operate the system. And now we're moving towards a lot more inverter-based power system. And then where is the inertia coming from? How do you operate the system without the large machines is also an issue. And that's an area that requires a significant amount of management and control. And then to bring the capacity of renewables to the load centers, transmission upgrades are required. And as most of the solar wind capacity is available not close to the load centers, which are typically in the coast. And so constraints in expanding transmission infrastructure is also an issue. And then resiliency is becoming a real significant problem, especially as we see more and more weather events. And for example, if you look at interruptions, last of estimate cost of electricity interruptions is roughly about $150 billion. That means, for every dollar spent on electricity, we are spending half a dollar to cover the cost of failures. So as we bring in more renewable capacity and intermittency and managing to ensure that the system is resilient is also requires further development and also infrastructure upgrades. And then if you look at the data for the last 20 some years, the number of weather events that are causing power system failures are rapidly increasing. I mean, this shows events that are $1 billion or more in cost over the last 20 years. And those are rapidly increasing. You've got 20 to 30 events every year, costing close to $400 billion in costs. So weather impact on the system is real. And climate change is affecting the grid very significantly. And making the grid more robust and being able to provide services despite the climate impacts is a challenge. And then if you look at the decarbonization goals of countries and various regions around the world, you have to look at current cost of electricity and what the ambitions are. I mean, if you look at the US, an average is about 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and if you want to convert our electricity system to decarbonize much more significantly, you have to ensure that the costs don't go up any more than 10 cents. And in countries like Germany and Europe, the cost of electricity much more costly. For example, in Germany is somewhere close to 35 cents a kilowatt hour. So you can bring in new technologies much more readily. And ensuring that the system is stable and reliable while decarbonizing it requires a large amount of storage and other assets. So that's where storage comes into picture. For example, decarbonization, adapting to renewables, and electrification, all these things, storage becomes central. And how much storage, I think, is a question on how far do you decarbonize. So, for example, if you look at this data from NREL, if you look towards, let's say, 80% decarbonization, then you need different type of assets, going from 4-hour shorter duration storage to longer duration storage, and so that's where we are moving towards. So where is storage today in the grid? I mean, if you look at the US data, we have about 0.5% of the generation capacity in storage. And historically, we had a lot of pumped hydro that was built to support the growth of the nuclear fleet. And in the case of US, it's about 29 gigawatts of pumped hydro. And over the last few years, we added about 30 gigawatts of battery storage. And at a high level, it's only represents 20 minutes of ride through. So even though pace of storage deployments is rapidly picking up, the amount of storage we have in the system is still fairly small. And again, it's limited to few regions, especially in the US. It's mostly in Texas and California at this point, and the rest of the country is just catching up. And most of the capacity that is being added is battery-based, and primarily to provide reliability and to firm up solar and wind capacity. So in the bigger scheme of things, if you look at the US, it's a terawatt grid, and even 1 hour of storage means 1 terawatt hours. And globally, we have roughly a 8 terawatt system, global power capacity, and the amount of storage to decarbonize, is massive. And depending on what you think of, what the storage system is going to do, you either have energy capacity requirements or power. I mean, most of the power applications require short duration storage, and those are all really provided by existing technologies, including batteries. And as you look at energy applications, which requires longer time scales and larger amounts of energy, that's where we need significant cost reductions in technology. And right now, most of the capacity we have, storage capacity, is primarily pumped hydro in most parts. Then the batteries are coming up rather quickly. And there is other technologies, including thermal, that will become significant at some point if we can go into longer duration storage. So just to give you a sense of where things are, a few years back, a megawatt size battery plant would have been considered a large. And now engineering has become routine for building large scale power plants to the size of hundreds of megawatts and as large as gigawatt hours of storage systems. And to the point that some of the natural gas peakers are being replaced with solar plus storage in some markets. So where is storage being deployed? This is primarily US case. As you can see, a lot of the storage is getting deployed either as standalone batteries or with solar and battery storage. Looking at the last few years in the US market, a good amount of it is, standalone and increasingly hybrid systems. And most of it in the beginning was primarily for power markets. Now energy storage is becoming cost competitive, and a lot of the energy applications for the bulk grid are beginning to open. So what are the range of technologies that we have from the batteries? We have, primarily lithium batteries. That's primarily because of mature technology, and majority of the current deployed projects are based on lithium batteries. What's in the horizon? We have battery technologies, including flow batteries and layer batteries for longer duration storage. And then further out, you look at things like solid state batteries, metal hydride batteries, and molten metal batteries. Some of these might start coming into play somewhere in the near future, but right now they are still in a development phase. For shorter duration, roughly 48 hours, lithium batteries is the technology of choice. Is bankable, projects are bankable, and systems are scalable to some modular technology. That system can be scaled from few megawatts to as large as gigawatt size plants. And all the emerging technologies have to compete with lithium batteries for this space. So let's look at lithium batteries and lithium battery-based energy storage systems in a little bit more detail. As I mentioned earlier, most of the project pipeline with grid storage is based on lithium-ion batteries. And a lot of the manufacturing capacity coming online today used to support the electric vehicle market. And that's what is driving the industry, and both in improving the technology and energy density and cost, and improving the cycles of learning. And so this makes battery storage using lithium-ion batteries bankable for large-scale projects. And now projects in the 4 to 8 hour market are mainstream, and major utilities are deploying solar plus storage on a commercial basis with no subsidies. And what are the range of technologies that are becoming used for grid applications? For the most part now, lithium iron phosphate based batteries are becoming the technology of choice, primarily because lower cost and better safety profile. And lithium-based solid-state battery is still in early developmental phase. So if you look at lithium-ion batteries, primarily they came from the consumer electronic industry over the years, and then over the last 10 years or so, EVs became a significant capacity for the lithium batteries, and that fleet is growing, and the capacity coming online to provide the EV market is significant, almost close to 3 terawatt hours of manufacturing capacity coming online over the next few years to support the growth of the EV fleet. And same technology is panning into the grid space, and same battery technology is going in to provide the modular batteries that are needed for the grid. So over the last few years, I think the pace of deployment is accelerating, and engineering of battery storage systems using lithium-ion batteries are more or less standardized now. Now in all containerized systems, either 2 to 4 megawatts for 20 or 40 foot containers, and these are all commercial. And as you look at lithium batteries, it's not just one technology; it's a range of family of electrochemical systems. And depending on the need, you get different material systems that go into it. For example, you hear about positive electrodes, LCO, NMC, NCA. These are all high energy dense electrodes, and those are all primarily driven for consumer electronics and EVs. And phosphates are lower energy density, but better safety profile, and a lot of this is going into the grid market, and the most even to the EV market. And so what is the state of the art today in EV batteries? Specific energy is reaching 250 watts per kilogram. And with silicon-based alloys, things are getting closer to 350 watt hours per kilogram near term. And then the longer-term goal for the industry used to get to 500 watt hours per kilogram. That's the longer-term goal for the EV industry. And ultimately, some of this technology will pan out to the grid space also. And with increasing energy density, safety is a concern. And I think there has been a challenge for the lithium-ion batteries and the grid. Some fires becoming is an issue in some places. So there is a lot of innovation in materials and manufacturing processes to make lithium batteries more cost-effective, and both in performance and energy density, and also in form factor. I mean, we are now beginning to build larger cells, and then push the costs down, especially in reducing the amount of cobalt use, nickel and cobalt in the EV batteries, and replacing it iron phosphate system for the grid market. So as you look at further out, I think the cost of lithium batteries is becoming significantly lower and lower, and makes it much more viable for large-scale grid storage. So what is the outlook for lithium batteries? I think as you look at the near future, the move in the energy storage for the grid is towards LFP, and the technology is becoming mature enough and is flexible, scalable to very large plants, and engineering has become fairly standardized, the container systems. And we still have issues with safety of large-scale lithium battery systems, but I think is being managed with a multifunctional approach, and then I think the safety profile of these systems are getting better and better every day. So as you look it out, for the next several years, I think lithium batteries is going to be the primary battery of choice for grid storage, and we'll continue to make improvements both in performance, safety, through packaging and thermal management. And then as you look longer term, I mean, is solid state going to be the next technology for the grid? Maybe, but right now it's still in experimental stage. And you also hear about metal air batteries, including lithium air being is a potential. That's probably beyond 5 years. And then historically, a lot of the grid applications, especially in the UPS systems, applications in substations, had lead-acid batteries, and lead-acid batteries is a 100 plus years mature technology. And for the grid, large-scale deployment, the grid hasn't taken off, and primarily has been low energy density and a limited cycle life has been the big challenge. And lead carbon batteries can give a long cycle life, but the cost has been significantly higher than what the industry looks for. So even though lead-acid batteries are mature and are available in large capacities, they are not getting significant traction as grid storage assets at this point. And some of the new technologies like ultra batteries or high carbon batteries, have significantly improved life cycle, but higher cost. And there is interest in bipolar plate technology that might bring lead acid back into a significant role for energy applications, yet to be seen. And then you hear about NAS batteries, sodium sulfur batteries. Historically, they've been widely deployed for long duration storage in Japan. There was about 6 gigawatts, 5 gigawatts of capacity deployed mostly in Japan. And even though it is mature and long cycle lives, relatively expensive, and there is only a limited number of manufacturers, and so hasn't panned out yet on a larger scale. And now it's competing with lithium-ion in cost and performance. Then you hear about flow batteries, which is again a technology that has been in development for almost 50 years now. And this flow batteries provide the advantage of separating energy and power, and in some sense, it's scalable to very large plants and more suited for long duration storage. And the challenge has been a lot of the flow battery systems have a low energy density, maybe 30, 40 watt hours per liter. That's almost like 7, 8 times lower than the corresponding lithium-ion systems. And what we have today are many systems based on vanadium flow battery systems. But the challenge is, I think, now you're competing with lithium-ion batteries, which are significantly much better established and much more scalable and bankable projects. With flow batteries, there are only very few companies, many of them on the pilot scale at this point, and competing with lithium-ion batteries in the 4-hour market has been rather challenging, and the longer duration markets on 10 plus hours are not open at this point. So yet to be seen how flow batteries will play out. Then you hear about a wide range of zinc-based batteries. I mean, if you think about your alkaline batteries, dry cells, those are some of the lowest cost battery technology. But historically, zinc MnO2 has been not rechargeable. So there has been breakthroughs in making them rechargeable, but getting them to scale, manufacturing scale at the cost performance attributes of that zinc and MnO2 can provide, it requires significant work. So that's still an early scale. You hear about zinc air for longer duration, some of the zinc bromine systems for similarly hybrid flow batteries. They have been in development and lots of pilot scale plants. Still, I think getting traction, and these are not playing a significant role for grid at this point. Again, competing with lithium-ion for some of the markets. Then here about sodium-ion batteries, essentially as a replacement for lithium in the lithium-ion space, and a lot of activity and some commercial projects getting deployed, especially by CATL and BYD, and still has the developmental gaps and are getting traction. We'll see how this plays out over the next few years. Then you hear about solid-state batteries, energy dense, replacing a solid electrolyte with a non-flammable solid. And this is primarily, what is the future of lithium batteries? Basically, instead of an oxide-based anode, you have you replace the anodes with lithium metal, so you get high energy density. Still early scale. I think we don't have large scale manufacturing capacity available, and the maturity of the product platforms for large applications are just beginning. So when this will come into play, maybe a few more years at the earliest. And then as you look further out, we look for deeper decarbonization of the grid. Then energy storage needs to move into 10 hours or longer. I mean, if you look at typical requirements for a natural gas or coal plant, operators expect that they have capacity for 36 hours or longer. So where is the 36-hour battery? So we don't have technology at this point. I mean, long duration is there's no mature commercial products, and also there's no market for longer duration storage. So as we drive towards decarbonizing the grid much more significantly, as we come closer to 80-90% capacity, then we need storage, not just diurnal 10 hours or 12 hours, maybe 3 days or a week long. And then seasonal is a real challenge as we completely decarbonize the grid. What is the storage that we have? Do we go towards the liquid fuels? So those are all the things that are beginning to come up. For right now, I think if you look at what are some of the things that are getting significant amount of investments and growth are metal air batteries, both iron air based systems that you hear, and zinc based systems like zinc air. And these are battery systems with the air breathing cathodes, and historically that has been a challenge to address. And projects are getting, I think, some commercial projects are coming up right now, but no real demonstrations yet. One of the challenges for some of these things are these tend to be a lower energy efficiency, somewhere in the 40% energy efficiency. So what are the applications that can support a battery system with the 40% efficiency? So that requires you have significant amount of curtailment and a market for resiliency, which is not there at this right now. And then looking at storage, it's not all about batteries. So I think you're building systems. We are integrating batteries into energy blocks, and then we layer with energy management systems, controls, and power electronics. So even if we get the significant amount of cost reductions in both performance and cost of batteries, you still have to build the systems. We have to get the same kind of cost reductions in the balance of plant, and that has been hard to come. So we have, as we standardize grid scale storage into larger and larger systems and containerized systems, these costs are coming down. But right now, if you look at it, maybe a third of the cost of the system is in the battery itself, but the rest is in the overall plant. And unless we get the overall plant cost down, we won't see very rapid reductions in storage cost. I mean, if you look at it right now, deployed cost of storage is about $300-400 a kilowatt hour. And how do you go down much lower when the battery costs are nearly close to bill of materials? So I think standardization and making the engineering much more routine is what it takes. Then safety is something that you hear about as being an issue for the industry, and I think most of our lithium battery safety came from consumer electronics, and those issues were addressed because it's fuel cell system, so we can enhance the safety through controls and power electronics. And as you start building larger systems, let's say EVs are roughly 100 kilowatt hours, and grid starts at a megawatt and larger, and they have a lot more cells to deal with. So how do you manage safety when you have tens of thousands of cells in a system? So engineering, better product management, and thermal management are the keys, right? And then you're getting a lot of new technologies. You're getting lithium metal layer batteries, for example, aqueous batteries, including flow batteries, molten salt batteries. So what are the safety issues for all these range of new technologies that are being explored for the grid? And then we're also deploying storage in non-traditional locations. I mean, if you look at it, most power plants are not really in residential areas or close to urban centers, and storage is coming closer to the population centers. And then ensuring the safety of larger systems in population centers is a concern for policymakers. So there is pushback. And how do you address storage safety? And being able to get the required permits is also an issue at this point. And qualifying safety, I think, how do you qualify it when you're building a gigawatt size plant? How do you ensure safety? Do you do full scale testing? Not possible, right? So we have to increase the standardization. And what are those standards? We want to have, standards at all levels, system level. If you'll hear about the cell level standards, BMS, EMS, energy management systems. And then you have the energy storage systems. When you build the systems into blocks or containers, then you have 9540 and the Caprice-Mesa standards and the PA, they all come into play. Then you build the systems and deploy them. Then you look at the fire codes. So all these standards have to be strictly adhered to and in both system build and deployment and commissioning. And how do you ensure the projects implement and the storage standards, the system level standards is not a typical engineering issue. This is all a regulatory process, and ensuring that the systems get deployed with adequate standards is a work in progress. And then how do you interconnect large scale storage systems? Historically, if you look at most of the storage, that was deployed at the grid edge for the most part. And now storage is getting deployed closer to the subtransmission and distribution subtransmission, and at some point as a transmission asset. And then what are the standards for connecting storage at the transmission level? I mean, right now you have IEEE 1547 and .9 is the standard for interconnecting storage at the DER, which has a DER distributed as a distributed energy resource. So it's primarily at the distribution level. As we move towards subtransmission and ultimately at the transmission level, let's say as a transmission asset, and then now the new standards are coming up. IEEE 2800 is a new standard for interconnecting renewables and others at the transmission level, and .9, 2800.9 is the standard for energy storage. So these standards have to become part of the process, and these are getting traction in many markets. So how do you make storage mainstream to grid operators? I think, lower cost is still a challenge. I think, storage is primarily getting deployed in higher energy cost markets. And how do you make storage become cheaper? One area is, longer cycle life. Most batteries don't have the typical cycle life of large grid assets, tend to be, 20, 30 years. Now, how do you get the storage systems to perform that long? Still work in progress. And as you look at deeper decarbonization of the system, then longer duration storage is a major gap, and that's being addressed with a lot of R&D and deployments. And as you look at the technologies, we are using the same base technology for most of the applications, from microgrids to large transmission systems. And then some of those applications, as we build larger and larger plants, safety concerns become significantly real. So, and then industry needs to learn cycles of learning. I mean, I think product platforms are not mature in some cases. I think, until recently, every storage project was kind of unique. You engineer it. And you don't get the cost advantages if you engineer every system differently. So there has to be further standardization in equipment, permitting, construction processes. And then storage is a new asset for the grid operators. I mean, the business models are not really robust, and we don't have the operational tools for especially the smaller utilities to look at storage. And then there is a significant amount of regulatory policy that is catching up to allow storage to perform multiple functions. So what are the issues as we look at storage for the next 5-10 years? Now we still need to improve energy density, cost performance for all battery technologies. That brings the cost down. Long duration is required as we move to deeper decarbonization. And then what are the technologies that we have for 10 plus hours is a real challenge at this point. We need to address the foundational materials issues to enhance safety. That's work in progress. Systems are complex. You're building large scale, megawatts to gigawatt size systems using small cells. So making them much more modular is a need. And cell formats are small, going to larger format cells to reduce the overall system cost. That's a work in progress. And then efficiency is a burden for technologies that are not lithium-ion, especially flow batteries, all the air batteries. And for those projects, I think no ready markets at this point. And then from the grid side, electrification and readiness of the grid for supporting the electrification is infrastructure needs. And how do you actually bring the capacity that are needed for providing charging infrastructure, especially in the urban areas, is I think is a work in progress. And also we don't have standardization of right-through requirements. We don't have robust global standards for charging and electrical interconnections for the charging infrastructure. And as we bring in more EVs into the urban markets, how do you actually manage the demand and be able to still provide the reliability of the distribution grid requires much more robust management controls. And in the longer term, though, you have to look at the fleet electrification, and then can we use EVs as a grid resource? That'll come up. And look at the broader grid issues, decarbonization. We need to accommodate a lot more renewables. We need to have the grid support electrification, deeper electrification of the transportation fleet, and then requires a much higher level of coordination and the flexibility of the system to allow. And that also means that a market design needs to happen for this level of coordination with renewables and EVs. And do we have the resource adequacy to do all the things that we are looking for? That's an issue. And how do you ensure the reliability and the resilience of the system with a fully decarbonized grid? Do we know how the system performs when we have all these intermittent resources and distributed resources to provide the same level of reliability that we have for many years? So that's something that we need to know, how the operational reliability of the future grid is going to look like with all the new assets. So it needs to become much more smarter. So with coordinated sensing and controls, and also improve cyber, because once you bring in all the inverters and then cyber becomes an issue. Some of the bottlenecks, infrastructure upgrades for the transportation is one. We need to start looking at power conversion systems with better topologies and much lower cost than what they are today. And then, as you look at deeply decarbonized grid, how do you provide black start without the traditional assets like large natural gas or coal-fired power plants? And then make sure that the system is reliable. So, with that, I will stop and take any questions. Charlie.
Thank you, Dr. Babu, for the interesting and nice talk. We have some questions to take. I think the first one is a remark by Mark Underwood. So he says, my local town is proposing a moratorium for 1 year on storage batteries. I'm speaking at the town meeting against it. So no reason was given, guessing fire fears. anyone else seen this sort of elected official? So it's about the safety of the batteries, I think his question is. Do
Yeah,
you
I
have any
think, you know,
comment?
this is a concern for many local jurisdictions, and that's something that the industry has to address. Okay, I think there have been a number of battery fires, and so there are significant concerns in putting batteries in urban areas. And this is a challenge for industry. I mean, there has to be, you know, a high level of integrity in providing systems that are resilient against fires. Which also means, you know, you want to ensure that the technology that go into the systems are the highest class reliable battery systems with the right amount of engineering and management and controls to mitigate any fires.
Does Mark's
Is there any way
apply to
during
home
service?
batteries?
Yeah, go on. Yeah, go on, Charlie, please.
Does Mark's question apply to home batteries or just storage facilities?
I think it applies to home batteries also. Okay, there have been fires with home batteries.
Yeah, they're telling us it's storage, but I'll know better tonight. Yeah, if I could follow up on that, I'll try to keep this short. Because this is the sidebar. What's the right way forward? Is it to have small microgrid projects that have managed risk so that communities can move ahead with better understanding and education along these lines while, you know, not putting a clamp on innovation?
Well, I think, you know, it's good engineering practices is what is needed. Compliance with existing standards is also what is needed. Those are the things. I mean, there have been lots of storage projects that deployed. I mean, we got California alone has close to what 30 gigawatts now, 20 plus gigawatts storage, right? So there are lots of projects, large scale, a few megawatts to almost as big as a gigawatt. And it's not always the battery which is causing the fires. It could be anywhere in the system. So ensuring proper engineering and controls and standards are complied with is what is needed.
Okay, got it.
Do you think is there any technology or any parallel technology required to check the health of the battery during service or at any point?
Yeah, I think, you know, most of the storage plants, they have both battery management systems, energy management systems, or cell level performance monitoring, or at least module level performance monitoring. So there is a high level of integration on sensing.
Okay.
But it's not a perfect science, right? I mean, think about it this way. If you're building a tens of megawatt system, then you may have 100,000 cells. So each of them, all it takes is one cell. So when you build a module, how do you mitigate fire propagation inside a module? That's where a lot of engineering is.
Oh, what is the major source of this fire accidents in batteries? What is the main cause of this thing?
Well, again, it can happen anywhere. I mean, okay. But let's say if a cell level, lithium battery cell level, historically has been dry growth in a lithium ion battery, which means, you know, a thermal event where the cell has actually become hot, and then there internally you have oxides provide oxygen, and you have electrolytes, which are basically hydrocarbons. So there is a propensity within the cell if it goes to really high temperature to fail and cause a fire, right? And that's one issue. So how do you mitigate cell level failures? Can you control cell level failures, or can you disable that module?
Since just follow up this question, what's your opinion on the future of lithium batteries? When recyclability or sustainability of this thing, or we have enough mining access in the future to continue using lithium the way we are using now? Or
well, again, you know, it's not the lack of material; it's the location and the supply chains. That is the cause of concerns for many people. It's not the availability itself.
Okay. So there is no replace.
Yeah, where it's located.
There is no replacement required for lithium. So this way we can take it. Okay.
And we don't have recycling as happened. We're just beginning to recycle, right? Ultimately, the industry becomes large enough, everything is going to be recycled.
Oh, can be recycled. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. We have some more questions from Charlie, so I'll read it from the chat box. Can hydrogen be used for storage and have the hydrogen burning plant used to recover power rather than fuel cells?
Well, hydrogen is, people are looking at hydrogen, especially for longer duration storage. I think it's an area that is great interest. Can hydrogen play as an asset for providing the 100+ hours or seasonal storage is one. And you have to look at, again, efficiency of the overall hydrogen cycle, close to 40%. So unless you have significant curtailment and really low cost electrons, hydrogen cannot play, right? So which means, it's limited to where hydrogen come into the mix. But as you look at deeper decarbonization and the need for longer duration storage, there is a place for hydrogen.
And the next question from Charlie is: Can pumped hydropower be expanded? Can it be used in tall urban buildings? We can implement our hydro-based power generation.
Well, again, you have to think about capacity needs. Let's say large cities have a large energy requirement for power capacity. In LA, metropolitan LAPWD, which operates the LA grid, is 10 gigawatts. So where do you get 10 gigawatts of capacity for 24 hours, right? So looking at urban areas is really challenging to provide the renewables and storage in the large urban centers. Things need space. So,
right. Thanks. And the next question from Charlie is: Can SMR nuclear units provide variable output?
well, I think those are typically base load. Can you make an SMR flexible? Well, if you have a significant amount of storage to couple with SMR, then you can make it a flexible asset. But we're not there yet. I mean, SMRs are just getting ready for early certification deployment. That's SMR is a base load, and a lot of the data center operators and all the hyperscalers are looking at SMRs as a viable technology for their needs. And they could be behind the meter, which means they don't really have to comply with all the NERC type requirements. But we're not there yet.
I think there's one more comment regarding the hydrogen storage. Has anyone looked at hydrogen as an indirect greenhouse gas?
Can you repeat the question?
Has anyone looked at hydrogen as an indirect greenhouse gas?
Well, right now it is a greenhouse gas because most of the hydrogen we're getting is from natural gas, right? So in that sense, you're burning natural gas to get hydrogen, and ultimately you want to go to electrolysis of water to make hydrogen completely green. And that's is not there.
Do you see any safety threat in utilizing hydrogen as energy source? Storage.
I'm not an expert in that area. I think we have similar concerns because we have a flammable gas, highly pressurized, and we need to transport it in pipelines at some point, right? And all the concern that you have with natural gas will come into play, and even more so.
And I have a question: what's the average lifetime of these power grids, large power grids? How long it's so well?
Well, most of the large grid assets, anywhere from 30 to 40 years.
40 years. Okay.
I mean, large transformers, average age is 40 years. That's a good example, right? And all the things, if you look at, once a transmission system gets built, they're operating for 50, 60 years. And we have transmission systems that were built 60, 70 years back, still in operation. I mean, they're upgraded, but it's still in operation. So good assets are long duration, long life assets, 30, 40 years. So storage technology right now don't have that life cycle of batteries don't last 30 years. So some of the battery plants, they're over capacity, they're built in with excess capacity. So even with the degradation, you still provide 15, 20-year life cycle.
All right. Okay, Marwa asks, okay, I take it from the last question. What innovative materials and chemistries can revolutionize energy storage, offering high energy density, faster charging times, and longer lifespans?
Well, right now, if you look at what is the lightest metal, is lithium. We are already at the lightest metal, and that's the highest energy density. So it's not just energy density that matters. I think, it's more about safety and what is the performance at a system level. You want to build cells which are energy dense, but at the same time have the safety profile of let's say, an active battery. So it's, you balance between safety and performance.
Okay.
And in the end, grid operators don't care about what technology I have, as long as I provide electricity at the lowest cost. It's all about, can I provide, let's say, if you look at RV or parity with natural gas or coal-fired power plants. That's what matters.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily always the performance. It's about, at the system level, what is my levelized cost?
Okay. So it's more of a design and product
Yeah,
innovation.
it's engineering at the plant level.
So another question from a participant, why are grid interconnection queues so enormous for stationary storage, solar and wind in the USA?
Well, somebody has to build the capacity for transmission line from the places where lots of wind plants or solar plants are being deployed. Those are not necessarily in the transmission corridors, and build out of the transmission capacity is a long process. It takes time, and who is going to make those investments? So there are constraints in the available capacity, and building that capacity requires a market and a guaranteed return for the who is going to build the line.
I think we can take one more last question. It looks like from Arun Venkataraman, it's a general question. He's asking about, enjoyed yesterday's session, and I kept hearing about involvement of industry or private companies in climate tech projects, depending on perceived market worthiness. If climate change is recognized as an imperative by industry, why would they drag their feet?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, for let's say utility industry to make major investments, they want to make sure they can make those investments and that they have the support of the regulators to go and make those capital investments needed. So it's a balancing process, right? Where do I have the capital to deploy that much capital and convince a regulatory body to get me to go and build, right? So it's a dynamic between investment needs, allocation of capital, and the market. So that's where the policy side comes, because the energy industry is highly regulated.
Right.
So which means, each time a public utility wants to go and add significant capacity, either in generation or infrastructure transmission, they have to go to a regulatory body asking for their permission so that they can deploy capital, raise the money, deploy the capital, and have some reasonable return.
All right, Dr. Chalamala, thank you for the nice talk and a very good interaction post following the talk. And we thank again for your participation and the talk.
Okay. Thank you, Alan.